Have you ever noticed how much we fear what we don't understand? Whether it starts in a new job, moving to a new city, or even when it has to do with watching probably a horror movie or something. It's that fear of the unknown that gets us every time. But why is that? Why does uncertainty make us so uncomfortable? Today we're diving into the science behind our fear of the unknown, how it affects our decisions and mental health. And most importantly, what we can do to embrace uncertainty instead of running from it. Let's start with the basics. The fear of the unknown, also called xenophobia in psychology, not to be confused with fear of other cultures, basically describes our discomfort with uncertainty. It's when we don't have enough information to predict what's coming next, and our brain, well, it doesn't like that. You know that feeling you get before stepping into a room full of strangers, right? Or when you're waiting for exam results and your mind starts spinning out worst case scenarios? Well, yeah, that's your brain trying to protect you from preparing for every possible outcome, even if most of them are unlikely. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Our fear of the unknown is actually hardwired into us. So back in the day, way back in the day, like caveman times, like uncertainty back then often meant danger. Those were the times if you didn't know whether that rustling bush had a lion behind it, assuming the worst thing could save your life. Fast forward to today, and we are not exactly dodging lions on our way to work, but our brains haven't caught up. That part of our brain which is responsible for fear still goes into overdrive. Whether we face uncertainty, still goes into overdrive anytime we face uncertainty. It starts pumping out stress hormones like cortisol, which explains why uncertainty makes us anxious. Now let's talk about how this shows up in our lives. Ever avoided making a decision because you didn't know how it would turn out? Like being stuck with a job you hated because starting over felt too risky? Or maybe skipped out on an amazing opportunity because it wasn't a city or place you'd never been to? Yeah, that is called status quo bias. We stick with what's familiar even if it's not great. But here's the catch. Staying in your comfort zone might feel great, but it also means you're missing out on growth and new experiences. So why does our brain always jump to the worst case scenario? I know mine does so many times in a day. Why can't we just look at the unknown and think like, hey, maybe this will be awesome? But turns out it's survival instinct. Our brains are wired to prioritize negative outcomes because, again, back in the caveman days, being overly cautious kept you alive. But today, this negativity bias can hold us back. When we overestimate the risks of uncertainty, we end up fearing things that are often way less dangerous or less life-altering than we imagine, if that makes sense. It's like our brain's negativity is on autopilot mode. And let us not even forget how all of this affects us mentally. Whether it is worrying about a global catastrophe, pandemic, job insecurity, or even just small day-to-day unknowns can lead to a lot of anxiety and stress. Your brain is constantly stuck in fight or flight mode, and that takes a huge toll over time. I know it happens to me. That fear of the unknown makes me think every time. It makes me think all the time. Like, it's hard to explain, but at the end of the day, I could just be sitting there not doing anything and I feel tired. Mentally, I'm tired because my brain is trying to process things that haven't happened, most likely wouldn't happen, but I can't help it. It's like your mind has a mind of its own, if you get my drift. But here's the good news. That fear of not knowing isn't permanent. It is something we can understand, and let's get into how we can do that. So we have talked about what is yet to come or probably wouldn't come, that the unknown. Now let's talk about what we can do about it. So I'm shooting this video now, and I haven't even thought of how the editing process is going to go, what the reception towards this video is going to be like, and sometimes it makes me wonder, well, I can't avoid these thoughts, but I can definitely handle them better. Well, the first point would be to start small. If you're someone who hates stepping out of your comfort zone, try doing something that is unfamiliar, but keep the stakes low. For instance, taking a different route to work or to an event that you plan on going to. And I know I do this because sometimes on my way to work, I can look at my GPS directions and it will suggest a route to use. And I'm like, man, fuck that. And then I go the other way. I'm like, hey, what's the worst that can happen? If you haven't noticed, in most cases, your GPS wouldn't tell you you're going the wrong way. It would just reroute you and give you another option. I can still get to where I'm going. Maybe the only difference is that the time might change slightly, but yeah, sometimes just get out of your skin and then just take that risk. I mean, but just make sure that it's not a high risk that could cost you. Or you could also try a new dish at your favorite restaurant. Don't get stuck on that everyday jollof fufu or banku that you have whenever you go there. I mean, not to say that it's bad, but sometimes just tell yourself that, hey, I want to try something new. I mean, when I come in here, I'm always eating this, and I see people trying that and they seem to have this look of excitement on their faces anytime they eat whatever it is that you are not eating. So you could try that out. Just one day go like, you know what? I'm going to have this. I mean, just decide that one day I'm going to try something different on the menu. Just know what's in there because, yeah, just leave it at that. Just make sure you don't go eat something that you're not supposed to, especially if you have allergies and, you know, the rest. But yeah, these are little wins that help you train your brain to see the unknown as less scary. Yeah, scary as it may be, I think I always told myself that I would want to try two things, but at least bungee jump and jumping out of an airplane. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but I know I'd want to try that. I mean, hopefully soon though. And my village people, if you're listening, yeah, just allow me. Secondly, you can focus on what you can control. That uncertainty often makes us feel powerless. But the truth is, there's always something you can control. It may not be by match, but definitely there's an aspect of something that you can control. Even if it's just your mindset. Instead of worrying about what might happen, think about what you can do right now to prepare for it, if that makes sense. And finally, this one's my favorite. Frame uncertainty as an opportunity. Like, instead of thinking, what if all goes wrong? How about asking yourself, what if all goes right? It's just a simple shift, but it can completely change how you approach new situations. You know, one thing I love? Stories of people who face things that they were not expecting head on and came out stronger for it. I mean, take a second to think of entrepreneurs who quit their stable job to start businesses, or travelers who packed up their bags and everything to explore the world. Well, a lot of the time that would require that you have a lot of money, especially with the ones that I've seen, because airfares are not that cheap. These are people who didn't know how things would turn out, but they trusted themselves enough to make that leap anyway. But it's not for everybody. Just if you plan on doing stuff like that, just make sure you're taking baby steps. In my personal life, I have found out that the most rewarding experiences that I've usually start with that big question mark. And I'm not gonna lie, it is terrifying at first, but when I start doing stuff, it is worth it. For instance, I was very skeptical about getting a skateboard. And sometimes I'd ask myself, at my age, should I be on one? I could fall from my skateboard and hurt myself. There's that thrill or excitement anytime I jump on my skateboard, even though sometimes I wish that it was those electric powered ones. But at the end of the day, that fear we have because we don't know what's gonna happen, it's nothing but part of being human. If at any point you don't have any fear, then you do something wrong is small, but it's just our brain's way of keeping us safe. But you can't be too safe in this world anyway. And there's the reason why it doesn't have to control us. When we learn to embrace that uncertainty, we open ourselves up to growth, resilience, and a life full of possibilities. I mean, I do try it from time to time, and I'm loving it. So what about you? What is that one way that you faced the unknown in your life? And did it turn out better for you or worse than you expected? Let me know in the comments because I would love to hear your stories. And if you found this video helpful or entertaining enough, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little bit of a push to embrace uncertainty. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.